March 23rd. It's the Policy Advisory Committee. Start with attendance, go around the room, say who's here. Andrew, we'll start with you.
Andrew Henny is the attorney for the committee.
Rob Mezzanotte, Assistant Superintendent.
Katie Zimmerman, Parent Representative.
Jennifer Lima, School Committee member.
Laura Ray-Bateman, parent.
Jason Diego, parent.
Mia Thompson, teacher and parent.
Chaz Pazenko, IT Supervisor.
Okay, awesome, thank you. Did everybody get a chance to, oh, there's nobody here for citizens' comments. Did everybody get a chance to review the minutes from the March 9th meeting? Can I get a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, awesome. So Erin is gonna be a little bit late and she would like us to hold on the appeals process until she gets here because she walked through it with you all at the last meeting. So, if we can go to the student survey policy, which is a new policy that we had gotten, I think we had walked through the last time and we were making a couple changes with. The last time we talked about this, we talked about, I'm going back to December now, we talked about like differentiating between like survey with a capital S and survey with a little s, and trying to like tighten that up in the policy language. So I had made some changes. I think those changes are in red. And yes, so I added to the purpose of the policy, the definition of survey does not include surveys to gather student opinions, because that's what we talked about, like having to get school committee approval only for certain ones and not ones that like exit surveys or things that like administration is sending out or surveys that students are sending out, like as part of their senior projects and things like that. We wanted to make sure that it was only for things that fell under the PPRA or that were other things that might potentially fall under that. So we broke it into PPRA and non-PPRA surveys. So I think we still had a few questions, and yeah, we're gonna number all of them before they go to the school committee for approval. So Jason, I saw you added a comment.
Yeah, I did, but then after hearing you speak through it and then reading a little bit more into it, I guess my question was like in military we have PPI, or PII, sorry, not PPI, PII stuff, but then I didn't see the PPRA breakout. So I was just wondering if we wanted to define like what we would not be collecting or what would not be into that survey, but you already listed it below. I just didn't make that connection. So I think my comment is mute at this point, so I deleted it.
And then Ken had made a note about survey timing. So right now it says surveys must be submitted to the building principal 2 weeks in advance of the anticipated distribution. So if somebody wants to send out a non-PPRA survey, which would be like I guess a good example probably, Rob, would be like the DEI survey that we sent out, right? So 2 weeks in advance of when a person would want it to go out. It looks like Ken says it needs to be sooner than 2 weeks because he's referring to the timeline under the compliance with the PPRA, but Andrew, does it have to comply with that?
Nope.
Because it's a okay.
Nope, the only thing and again, this is just more of a policy issue, quite frankly, is if you want to give, for the non-PPRA, an option to opt out as well. I mean, I know it says it's you get the 2 weeks notice and that they're not mandatory surveys. Question whether you want to give parents the right to opt out of those as well. On behalf of their child.
We do get them.
Did I miss that?
Yeah, but you're right, I don't think that we say that, but we should say it.
I mean, if that's what you do, just probably even a sentence in there that says, parents will be provided the opportunity to opt out of these surveys, as well, if they so choose.
So do you need more than 2 weeks in order to approve the survey and then provide the survey or information to the parents to give them a window of time? Is that what he means?
No, I think he was saying that the 2 weeks conflicted with the timeline above, But I think that 2 weeks is to allow the opportunity, right, Rob, that 2 weeks is the window to like
So-
get the survey, review it, and do the opt-out.
Surveys must be submitted to the immediate district employees for this, at least 2 weeks in advance. So are we saying if I would like to, have a survey given out, I would need to notify, not me, but like whatever group, would need to notify the principal 2 weeks prior to the survey being released in order for the principal to review.
Review, say yes, and also send out communication to families that they have the ability to opt their child out.
2 weeks is tight.
Okay.
I think it's a little tight. And I'm just saying that because in order to provide adequate time for people to opt out, I think you need at least a week,
Okay.
you know? And I think just like, I don't know, like that can be a tight window.
So what is a more realistic number?
So I'm just imagining because like there can be, surveys can be tricky, you know? Because I think you gotta look at a lot of, there's a lot of different things you gotta look at in terms of what questions are being asked, how are they being asked, are they something, there's a lot of different things that can go into that, you know, as far as like, I'm putting my principal hat on for a second, like if I'm assessing it, like what type of questions are we asking, who's administering the survey, what are we doing with the data, or what's intended to be done with the data. I think there's a lot that, I would say a month.
So remember, none of this has to do with any of the, like the PPRA information.
Right. But I'm imagining, see, this is where I think there's a lot has to do with what the survey is, I think the purpose of it, you know, and then who's gonna be reviewing it and what could be the goals of it. I'm maybe making it too complicated, but I tend to go straight to the more complicated, you know? Like, I'm thinking of senior project is one example,
Yeah.
right? Senior project is a thing that all the kids do when they graduate. A lot of times they send out surveys to get information about their senior project. That's like lower scale, right? This is like a survey a kid's doing for a project. Versus something like like something coming from one of our subcommittees, for example, where there could be more that like hinges on the data
Yeah.
that is coming out of it, you know what I mean? And so I think that there's, with that type of survey, I would just probably feel better about a little more time having been there. But then again, if it comes out of the advisory group, I'm thinking of our DEI survey that we did, Jen. That came out of the advisory group, but that went to the school committee before it went to the approval process, right?
Because we were unclear of whether it needed to or not, right? And so
Yeah.
we did that route because we wanted to because we didn't have a survey policy, right, to make sure
Right.
that it was. So I think based on this policy, I don't think it would have to moving forward. Like that would be something that the administration could approve on their own, I think.
Okay.
So in this, like the way that I'm reading it for the non-PPRA surveys, it seems like you have the PPRA, which is like that like personal identifiable,
Mhm.
like the stuff that we really want to keep secure.
Yep.
And there's already safeguards there, but for the PPRA, it seems like it's split up between the mandatory ones that we want all students and families to participate in unless they opt out. Like everybody's going to get the survey versus like the non-mandatory ones. Would the senior project fall into that non-mandatory piece that, because it says in yellow or in red, surveys that are not mandatory in nature and only request a student's opinion on what they did or did not learn, that does not require any additional prior approval. So I don't know, would that cover some of those like senior project type surveys, or would that fall into the non-PPRA piece, or do we need to delineate that further and have some clarity on it?
Because I think we added I threw the yellow piece in there because we were talking about like the exit tickets, right? Maybe like where
Yeah.
you like are putting like the quick because teachers are sending those out now, and technically that is a survey. So we wanted to delineate that so that teachers did not have to require permission to send those out.
Right. And for the sake of this, I would not qualify those as a survey. To me, that's an instructional,
It's
Yes,
feedback.
assessment.
that's an instructional method, you know what I mean, is to use that.
Yeah.
People are being asked.
Yeah, so, yeah, I think that if we use, my mind's going to our survey, right? Because
Yeah.
if we use that as
That's
like.
a good example of it,
It's,
yeah.
if you use that as an example, we went from advisory committee doing the work to like identify, all right, what's the survey, what's the purpose of the survey, what information are we hoping to learn, what are we hoping to do with it, defining that, defining the questions we ask, how we ask them,
Mhm.
defining who we want our audience to be, going through the process of getting feedback and so on and so forth. From there, it went to the school committee for
Mhm.
approval. The advisory committee technically reports to the school committee,
Mhm.
right? So, is that the proper, I guess I'm asking, do you think that's the proper course of action versus the advisory committee? Because I think, as a principal, I think I would feel a little bit hesitant to not give a survey that comes out of a school committee advisory group, right?
I mean, if the school committee is saying it should go, then that's one thing, but I think these, are like for surveys, like I'm trying to think of one that didn't come to the school committee, that was a student survey that went out, right? Like, I think there was one that went out that the student, like the, high school mental health team sent out at one point.
Mhm.
And it was, I can't remember like the exact questions, but it went out from them and it
Mhm.
was asking questions. And so that did not come to the school committee, but that was a survey that was asking questions. So like
Yep.
that type of survey.
Even, I'm thinking also Vision of the Learner is something we did a survey
Yes,
for too,
right.
which was, that didn't go before that.
Right, so I think those are the ones that would fall under this section number 2. And so-
Non-PPRA.
So, and, so what would the timeline be for the turnaround? So like, once somebody decided that, hey, we wanna do this,
Mhm.
what would the timeline be?
The timeline of like approving it and administering it kind of
Mhm.
thing? So, I'm thinking out loud here, so bear with me. So if it's something where 4 weeks.
Well, I was thinking two
Yeah.
2 weeks to get approval, and then you want a week or two for parents to look at it, and if they have questions, have enough time to say, hey, what
Yeah.
is this regarding, and maybe I'd like to opt I'm completely throwing it out there, but that just seems to,
Yeah, because I'm thinking like, if I use an example of not the DEI survey, of one that's maybe administratively
Yeah.
driven. If it's administratively driven, then, okay, as administrators, we would create a survey, we would design what we wanted to ask and so on and so forth. And then we would, ask for it to be administered, have an opt-out process. I think 4 weeks is safe. You know what I mean? Might be a little long, hold on.
Yeah, I mean, and 4 weeks is what is in number 1. So like, just because statutorily we don't have to follow that, doesn't mean that that's not the right number.
Right.
If that's the comfortable number.
Yeah, I think keeping it consistent would make sense.
Okay.
So I'm just going back, I'm looking at a comment I put in here a few weeks ago, just looking at the timeline. And I put a comment saying I think that the timeline for this review is sooner than 2 weeks. I was basing it on the section above that says within 2 weeks of determining to administer a survey, and at least 4 weeks prior to administering the survey. So the above,
is the PPRA.
That's the
below is
PPRA.
non-PPRA.
right, so in the PPRA, it says at the start of the year, within 2 weeks of determining to administer a survey, and at least 4 weeks prior to administering the survey, each school will inform the parent, guardian, caregiver of each student attending the school.
So that's 4 weeks just for parent notification on the PPRA,
Right.
that's irrespective of whatever time it takes to, decide whether you're gonna administer it in general.
And on the non-PPRA, we're saying surveys must be submitted to the building principal, immediate district employee, supervisor, contact person, at least 2 weeks in advance of anticipated distribution to allow for adequate review and consideration. So we're just saying that the immediate supervisor, building principal, will look at it 2 weeks prior, and then the survey is going to go out.
Yeah, and my, again, initial hesitation was that if it's a survey the building principal needs to review and then needs to provide an opportunity for opt-out to go into effect, 2 weeks might be a little tight. That was my only thought, because, you know,
So why don't we
because,
just use the same timeline as
Yeah.
the PPRA,
That-
and then you have that,
That's where we
Which I
just
know
landed
I'm
Yeah.
after about a 10-minute conversation.
yeah, I think that's where we need to go.
sorry, I know I was walking in.
No, that's okay.
Is it possible in terms of the format of this, like as I'm reading through, feels a little clunky, so you have the philosophy and then the policy, and it jumps into the PPRA, and then you have the notice, and then you have the non-PPRA, and then you have the statement about non-mandatory surveys. I would almost say like trying to break that up into like 3 headings, like these are the types of surveys, and then like this is like have like 1, 2, and 3 would be PPRA, non-PPRA, and non-mandatory surveys, and then have everything underneath to be able, and then you could put the notice and notification and everything else, and then keep the rest with data protection and integrity.
Mhm.
And I would also recommend
Protection wise.
putting the data protection, something about data protection and integrity in the philosophy as well. So we talks about opinions and making everybody feel heard and valued, but I didn't see anything about protecting student privacy as part of it. And I think that's a big deal, or at least a big concern that other parents will have as well.
In the philosophy.
In the philosophy that not only do we want to express, allow, or create a structured way for students to express their opinions and feel heard and valued, but also making sure that we're protecting data,
As we
student
do.
data.
Yep, that's a good point.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yep.
I like that.
So just so I heard you under policy, like, we're gonna say these are the types of policies that the types of surveys that we have, the PPRA, the non and the non-mandatory, these are the notifications that are required, and it sounds like we're saying it's the same notification for all 3. And then this is our,
Well, the third one won't require any
Any
notification
notification.
because it's, based on what we have written here, it's non-mandatory. So that could be.
like, under the notification, right?
Yeah.
Yep, so the notification for the first 2 are the same, and then the third one.
Would be different,
It's
right.
different. And then data protection and integrity is the other part. And so, Ken, you had said I would include this for clarification because someone could argue that an exit ticket is a,
Well, it was just what was in yellow,
yep,
right? Because it says surveys that are not mandatory in nature and only request a student's opinion on what they did or did not learn in a particular class do not require prior approval. I think, just for clarification, right, like, a lot of teachers use exit tickets, those are for feedback.
mhm,
We don't want someone then saying, well, it's a survey. Well, it's not a survey, that's how there's communication back and forth
Should we
between
define survey?
staff and students on getting feedback on what they're learning and how they're learning.
Could we
Maybe we
quantify
don't
it?
need to worry about that part, could
Could we
that's
just
what came to
define
mind
what,
when I
sur-
read
like
those
what,
sentence.
should we define survey is as related to this policy?
policy.
Did you tell them that why I was late and that I wasn't being ready?
I didn't actually.
Oh, I was teaching, very apologies that I was late at school. My class gets over at 4:50. It was a journey. We could define survey, like a
Okay.
survey is something that is sent out, like, you know, like we could probably quantify like what that means, cause like an exit survey leaving a class is very different than a 20 question
Mhm.
survey sent from an external company, like those are not the apples to apples. But I also could see the flip side of what Ken was saying about like what counts as a survey. The other thing I was thinking
Also
about.
clarification for staff too, so they don't have to think like what they're putting together
Yeah.
for instructional purposes now doesn't have to get approved by
Yeah, So we definitely could differentiate the instructional purpose, but I was also thinking about, and maybe it's in here, but I couldn't find it, like when the students are surveying each other for like their Democracy Day projects and things like that, like where does that land?
That's what this was.
I couldn't quite find it, but I might have missed it.
It should be under the non-PPRA, and that's just getting approval by the principal.
Yeah.
Alright, so we would expect even, and I don't disagree with this, but even student surveys,
Should all be approved.
Yep.
I
So
would-
I think
would
we- yeah.
just wanna make sure
Would that
the
be a-
principal's aware of it going out.
Would that be a mandatory thing though, in the democracy, like, cause we also, like, if, I guess
because
where
that goes
my,
along with instruction too.
I guess where my question is what do you do with all those other surveys? Like, it's very clear, like, if it's a school committee or somebody putting together something, like a mandatory survey that doesn't have the PPRA stuff in it, that they would fall under the non-PPRA and require that 4-week lead time, but there's so many other data collection, like homecoming, like you leave the cafeteria and like have students voting on this and on that, like,
Right.
to me, that would be, it's not mandatory, but I don't know in the school piece, like, for some of the classes, some of the projects, like, for the senior project, is that something that it is mandatory? Like, if I was a student and I sent out a survey, that the expectation is that whoever I sent it out to was mandatory for them to respond, or the one that you had just mentioned for democracy, is that like a mandatory thing? Because if it's not, it seems like there's that category of non-mandatory that doesn't require additional approval, so I don't know if that falls under there, if we need that category needs to be changed or be more inclusive or less inclusive.
I think you have to go back to the purpose of the policy too, like,
Technically, none of our surveys are mandatory.
I was just gonna say that,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, we can't
Yeah.
mandate anyone to complete
I
a
mean, we have
survey.
ones that are,
So do we need to maybe think of, it's like,
mandated to send,
like
but no
required,
students.
and I mean, like, it's not that they're required to
Yes.
fill it, but we're required to do survey works
Yes.
for the state, right? All schools do that, that's
Yeah.
something that we're required to do. We are required to do the surveys through the school student assistance counselor program, right? We're required,
But it
needs to be
needs to be
approved.
technically, that's not true, we have to
Yeah.
Well,
approve
we
it,
could-
so.
Once we
do.
say we'll do it, we have to do it though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I think I'm wondering if we should change the language from mandatory to required of things that we are required to send out.
Yeah.
Versus something that's mandatory,
Yeah, 'cause
because
they-
anyone can take a required survey and say, I'm not doing it.
Right.
Does it matter the opt-out piece too? So it sounds like the PPRA one, there's a formalized opt-out process where a parent or guardian or somebody over 18 would have to opt out. And it sounds like the way that it reads that would also apply for the non-PPRA surveys, but then you have the third category that seems to be the one where everything else fits in, that doesn't have like a 18 and over opt-out clause. Like, I don't know if that, I'm just trying to wrap my head around like some of the, like, I think the top two are pretty clear. I think it's that third category where there's gonna be stuff that falls into there, and I think it's not clear of what would require prior approval and not.
Yeah, so for this, the purpose of the survey, all it says is, and we could change this, is that we are committed to protecting the confidentiality of students enrolled in the school department. And so and then it goes on the like the fourth sentence says, the purpose of this policy is to establish the parameters of information that may be sought in student surveys. So like our goal is, with this, is confidentiality and like having some authority looking at what is being collected to like protect students, basically. It's a student protection policy, right? Not a like, don't let people send survey policy, right? Like just to, like I always try to like reframe my brain on it. And so for the piece that we're talking about, like, does that connect to confidentiality or like protecting students from questions that shouldn't be asked of minors, basically?
So.
Like that's where like it lands in theory.
So we're saying two things,
Yeah.
right? Like, we've got surveys, we've got the surveys that fall under the PPRA, and then we've got surveys that don't. And we're saying the PPRA is covered under federal law, and then the ones that are not, we're saying you have to get approval from before you send out, basically. Unless it is a exit ticket, which we've just now said isn't a survey. So if you take that off the table, then there's only two kinds, right? Because we just said that the senior projects surveys require approval also.
The surveys that the students
students are sending
those are supposed to be approved by the teacher and the principal before they go out.
So if we take the teacher exit surveys off the table, then there's only two kinds, right?
Not my sole concern, one of my major concerns with this is honestly just on both ends, not just the PPRA, but so that the administration has some idea when a survey goes out. Because invariably, the way that it comes across my desk is maybe a well-intended survey, maybe not a well-intended survey, but something that the building principal or the administration had no idea went out and creates a firestorm. And so what you're trying to do here is at least have a guardrail that says, okay, before you send out a survey, well-intended or otherwise, you need to run it through administration. Let's make sure we all understand what's going out, what the purpose of it is, how we're gonna protect the nature of any of the responses, and that sort of thing.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying nothing goes out without approval. There's only two kinds. There's only two kinds that go out, PPRA and non-PPRA, but both require approval.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my main thing.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what an exit ticket is, but I bet it's a survey.
Well, in
Feedback.
theory it is, but the accountability for that lies with
Someone
the
could say
teacher
the
and whoever
survey, someone
supervises
goes through
that
instruction
teacher the way the
feedback. I don't
accountability
really
for a
know.
test would.
Right.
So like if I write a quiz, they're trusting me to write the quiz and follow the rules and not ask inappropriate questions, obviously.
So-
But then like that, there's a chain of command, like if I don't do that as a teacher, then somebody's gonna say, hey, you're not doing that. Whereas with the survey, if it just, like you said, if it just gets sent out and nobody knows.
Yeah, and it doesn't happen often, but when it does, and if it's a controversial area, whatever it is, it creates a problem.
I'm somewhat making sense of this in my head, and this is just me, but like part of it is, I'm thinking of it in two ways. One is like, the school is sending out a survey, right? So the adults an adult or adults are sending out a survey because we are seeking student information or, on a particular topic. Then, the senior project thing I see, or the democracy day thing, I see, that's part of an assignment, right? That's part of a school project or a school assignment. It's part of the work a student must do, right? To me, those are two separate things. No?
No.
They're not two separate things?
But it's still seeking, in my mind, it is still, you are surveying, like you're still seeking information from students.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. I'm just
So,
trying to separate them
use
in
the
my
pur-
brain
u-
of.
use the purpose though to help you, cause, but, like, would you care about confidentiality? So if a student in a class did a survey and Samantha fills it out and then that student goes and tells everybody that Samantha said X.
Yes, I would.
You
be
know what I mean?
concerned
So
about
that's
that.
where like I feel
Yes.
like it does need some, and it might not be the principal, the teacher might be like the approver in that situation, but I think if you go back to safety and confidentiality, those surveys,
I'm not
Yeah.
calling that into question whatsoever. I'm saying it for what you said about the approver piece. So like if I am doing a survey as a student for an assignment in
the teacher needs
the
to.
teacher
teacher's class,
is
the
the
teacher to me
yes.
would oversee, because that is an assignment I'm doing for that class.
Yeah.
Versus, so I almost think that in the policy, we may wanna distinguish between the two, because they're very different, right? If I'm a student surveying other students as part of an assignment that I have to do for a class, that's very different than, we the adults are asking the student's opinion about a particular topic so we can make, gather information.
I
So-
think we put language in there that says approval from the building principal or designee, right? Or the surveyor's immediate district employee, supervisor, contact person. So like in that case, the surveyor's immediate district contact person is
The
the
teacher.
teacher.
The teacher.
Yeah.
And you have,
But do parents and guardians have to have the ability to opt their kids out of a democracy-based survey?
I think that's gonna be a logistical impossibility. I really do. Not to,
No,
Yeah.
I'm not,
I'm
I'm
just
just saying
saying,
it,
like,
I'm just thinking
logistically.
about like, I always get the mad people emailing
Yeah,
me, right?
sure.
So like, I can't believe that you're, like, my kid was sent this survey, right? And then I asked Ken, and then Ken looks into it, and it turns out it was a Democracy Day one, like, and the teacher saw it or didn't see it, right? But the parent didn't get the opportunity to opt their kid out of that, and I agree with you,
Yeah.
I'm just walking through the email that we'll get. And so you could either make you either have to designate that like things that are for class have to be approved by teachers but does not have to follow the opt-out, the same opt-out processes. Like obviously no students are forced to take it, but like, or you have to have it follow that same one. But I do think there's a differential there.
Where do surveys about homecoming t-shirts land?
Right, PTO surveys about like dance themes.
Yeah, I don't like any of them.
Well, I'm just saying, it's the same thing,
I know.
right? Just a step up.
100%.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, that's, like, we just have to make a decision. Like, do you get to opt out your kid anytime we're doing a survey, or are there exceptions to that opt-out rule? Because I think we all are on the same page of the approval piece, right? Like, either the principal or designee, and a designee could most certainly be a
Should-
teacher, like,
Should
that
the
piece is
opt-out be
normal.
for the PPRA surveys, where you're asking probably more controversial questions?
It has to be for the PPRA
Right,
stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, that's what I'm saying, like.
Yeah, only for that?
that's-
Some parents wanna opt their students out of every
And
single.
some do, and they have that option, that's in Aspen, and we know who, you know, those
Mhm.
students are, but I'm just trying to think, you know, you get down to these, the democracy projects, and if we're putting all these timelines in place for the students, it's gonna get back to the point where it's gonna be impossible for them to do. If they give 2 weeks to the teacher, and then 4 weeks of notifying people, then they opt out, at that point, why do it?
It's true.
Right, when this is for academics, for students to do their, you know, school assignments and projects, and part of it is to gather, you know, data from their peers.
My personal opinion is that senior student surveys
I
should be
don't-
excluded from this.
Yeah, I would,
Yeah.
and then we just know internally they have to be approved by the,
Mhm.
they all get run by the, you know, looked over by the teacher, approved by the teacher and principal before they're sent
And the
out.
teacher needs to know that they can't fall under any of the PPRA, like, buckets.
What if we
And
said,
maybe we note something in there about that.
what if you made the survey about,
It's excluding, but making sure it doesn't fall under a PPRA survey.
what if the opt-out had to do with any time, like parents have to have the opportunity to opt out if there's any, like, confidentiality concerns, or, like, but, you know, like, I'm trying to think of a way to, like, help the administrators differentiate between what color do you want for the homecoming shirts versus a survey about I'm just thinking of some of the Democracy Day projects that I've seen, that people might wanna opt their kids out.
I'm sure, right, but like,
Can I ask a question?
Mhm.
And this is going to make it
There's
very
so
clear
many.
why I'm not a lawyer. In these cases of the teachers sending out the questionnaires and the classroom sending out the kids are not forced to take those, am I correct?
correct.
Okay. So if they're not forced to take them, do we really need to make sure that there's like an umbrella policy for allowing them to opt out? They just don't take them.
Because what happens is they take them, and then the parent finds out they took them.
The parent gets angry.
Yeah, it's never.
Right. That's for sure.
Very, very rarely is it ever the child.
Very
Yep.
true. No, I'm just wondering, like, is there any possible way that you could say something effective, because the surveys that you're talking about are not like, they're surveys that are given to us, the school department, to administer to the students. So is it possible that we could just differentiate internal surveys versus external surveys and leave it like that?
Even like during reading week, sometimes there are surveys that go out, what were your favorite books you read this week? And then, you
Yeah.
know, the librarian's picking the top, you know, 6
Mhm.
Caldecott winning books or whatever it may be. And we're reading these 6 books this week, and then there's a survey with
Yeah.
students.
I mean, I'm not
What was
gonna
your favorite
lie,
book? I mean, that's a
there's like
real
a
innocent survey.
1,000
That
surveys.
shouldn't have to go through this process
Yeah.
to complete. Because
Like
what's
a-
gonna happen
like
is they're just not gonna,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah, it'll
they're
get delayed so
blocking-
much that it's
Right,
not.
we're getting in the way of red tape of
Yeah.
doing.
So, I mean, technically, that's a non-PPRA survey, right? Because
Mhm.
that what Caldecott book is your favorite does not follow under any of these, so we could say.
But then do you have to put an opt-out out for?
Look, we could say that it's our policy, right, that we don't believe that non-PPRA surveys should require an opt-out, like, that could be our policy, we are writing this.
Could I dig just a little?
Yes.
You said, because what my kid's school used to do is you got one shot for non-PPRA. You, at the beginning of the school year, you check the box in Aspen,
Those
you
are
either
going
want
off.
your child to participate in non-PPRA surveys, you know, or you don't.
Yep.
And if you opt out, you're out of all of them. All the teachers know from day one, Andrew does not, his child does not participate in any surveys. But if you don't opt out, then you're in. But PPRA is different, that's,
Mhm.
you're gonna follow that process. That's, I don't know how that works with you guys, but that's an option as well. maybe a little cleaner from an administrative point of view. As you said, you've already got that option, now you can go to teacher A and
Just
say, hey,
specify
3
it.
kids in your class have opted out of all surveys. Anything that you give that resembles a survey doesn't go to these 3 students.
And we do.
And you can see it,
we
when you
do-
go through your Aspen list, right at the top, and there's all the icons, and there's an icon there.
Mhm.
You know, if I don't want my kids taking the survey, it's there, teacher says it, that, you know, it's a little symbol.
So maybe just some kind of a statement that says, if you check this box, here's what happens, if you don't check this box, here's what happens.
So that kid in that theory would not get to vote in the color of the homecoming shirt, and that's just fine.
It just,
Well, if we're.
if you checked, if you said, I don't want my child to participate in any
It's an all or
surveys,
nothing
then
thing,
yeah.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, regardless of how benign the survey is, you're in or you're out.
Yep.
I feel like that's a good enough compromise, because we can't get, like, it just is too much.
Can I,
Yes.
can I just add one more point? So being a teacher and exit tickets and, I guess bell ringers or entry tickets, like, I know we kind of went back and forth. I really think that we should make sure that those are not part of the survey. Like
Mhm.
they are assessment tools,
I agree.
just
Yeah.
like you'd be giving a quiz. I
Yeah.
think if we start getting into that, then it's
Mhm.
really gonna hamstring teachers, because I know a lot of teachers use the exit tickets and entry tickets as part of graded events, so if
Yeah,
we get into that point where
that's
you
different
have to
from-
like
That's an instruction
check.
tool.
Right.
Yeah, I just wanna
Yeah,
make sure,
that
cause
should
we had talked about that in this meeting, that exit tickets were survey, like I just wanna make sure that,
That's
like,
that's
that-
instruction,
I
that's
don't
an
know what an exit
instructional.
ticket is.
It's like,
that's
don't
an
listen to me.
instructional
write
tool
down
that
3
you
things
gather
you learned
feedback.
today.
yeah, I just wanna make sure, because as we were talking about it, it seemed like we were kind of leaning
You could
towards
leave
that
it
being a
in the
Can we
survey.
name it
Yeah.
that it's not in the policy?
I was, in the
Yeah.
policy and in the,
We don't
and
need
in
to
the,
name
in the Aspen section. I'm assuming they let you give some kind of
No,
thing.
you just say non-instructional surveys.
Yeah,
Whatever, there's probably a better word, but non-learning surveys. That's an assessment tool, that's not a survey,
Right.
to me. Like, that's, like, even though, because you could say a test is a survey, then,
Right,
like,
right,
we're like in a
right.
weird place at that point. I just think
It's-
you just make it clear that
Final exams.
there's that piece, and then,
I would include it as a formative assessment, and it's not.
yeah, that's, so I don't think you have to call, Ken brought that up as an example,
Okay.
not based on,
So we're just gonna ignore it?
yeah, I don't think, like, I think it was a nice example to
Okay.
talk about, but I think
You don't think it's
From-
a,
no, I think that if somebody came up and said, hey, XYZ, then they would say, hey, this is part of teaching and learning,
Okay.
go away, in the nicest way. Like, you know, it's just like a quiz, it's just like a test, it's just like a paper,
Okay.
an exit survey is that, like, I don't think that goes into the confidentiality piece or the safety piece, like, what 3 things you learned today is not
Okay.
the same, in my mind. That, I think you can draw that line really clearly there. So I think I'm fine with where we landed, I think it's tough, but like, it's hard to what if in the other direction.
so we're gonna give opt-out at the beginning of the year, you're in or you're out, for non-PPRA surveys. Everybody on board with that?
Do we wanna communicate that somehow to families so they know that when parents say, oh, I wanna opt my kid out of that they know they're also opting the kid out of like, you know, themes for dances or teacher colors and those kind of things?
Yeah, well, yeah, I
Is
think
there,
they should know what that means,
like a
yeah.
dissemination of information
Yeah.
piece to
Yeah.
that? Yeah, you could.
Yeah, well, yeah. It's just it's kind of blending the legality of it, but really just a clear message to parents that,
Well,
you know,
like in
if A, then
Aspen-
B, if B, then C.
Yeah, and in Aspen, you would, if you're doing the checkbox, like there's like those pages that like explain
That would
it, and it
explain-
would
would be
reference this
explained in there,
policy,
right.
and they could,
Yep.
I think you
Yeah,
can be
you can do it in
transparent
a
about
couple
it,
of
and then,
sentences.
Yep.
it's the same as like when I accidentally picked, I don't want my kids in 8 pictures, right?
Yeah.
It's the same vibe, and then I was like, oh wait, I didn't mean to unclick that, you
Yeah.
know, so I think it's that same, like when you're going through those things, like you just are like, no, and I think to your point, like quantifying, like this means big or small,
Right.
like,
So correct me if I'm wrong on this, but what I'm understanding this is that the PPRA, for PPRA, it would be that the family, the parent, guardian has a right to see the survey and to decide, to review the survey and opt out or opt in based on that, for that individual survey.
Mm-hmm.
For the non-PPRA, it's you're in or you're out, like,
Sight unseen, at the beginning of the
at the
year.
beginning of the
Yeah.
year, you either are going to be all in on the non-PPRA surveys, or you're not getting any of the non-PPRA surveys.
Yeah, you're not gonna get a opportunity to review a homecoming T-shirt survey.
So just, and this speaks more to practice than policy, but nobody knows what PPRA means.
Yeah, but that's why we're going to explain it, yeah.
Right, so, and how this plays out in terms of communication and things like that will be important to make sure that we're explaining it in plain language about what it means, yeah.
Let me go this way. What types of surveys are you currently sending opt-outs for that are not PPRA surveys?
That's a good question. I feel we just did one.
So does,
So one, okay, well, that wasn't a survey, that was more of a,
So
we
for
did a
the-
program for the elementary school on the anti-vaping stuff, which we did an opt-out for, but that wasn't a survey.
for PPRA, when it says it says sensitive information such as political beliefs, sexual behavior, illegal conduct, and mental health data. So,
That's pulled right from the statute as well.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah, I'm reading this, yeah, so. What was the question? It was something about, making them know what PPRA is. So it's not necessarily, like, PPRA is like the amendment. Like, what they're what they have the right to see based on that, like, law is any surveys that have those things. But, like, in theory, if they opt their kid out of everything, they're opting out of the PPRA ones too.
No, I think it's two separate.
I don't think it is, I think you're,
I would want, the PPRA is pretty specific with respect to those groups. I would keep them separate.
Alright.
I would.
cause you wanna be able to give them the opportunity to look at them.
Yeah, if anyone says, yeah, yep.
So it would be two different questions. It would be like a PPRA survey. Under the PPRA Act, like, you have the right to see any surveys, with sensitive information such as blah 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 blah. Like these are by like selecting whatever, like yours.
And the notice is different too. Under the PPRA, don't forget, you have 4 weeks as a parent. It's 4 weeks prior to administering, you've got to notify parents or guardians. Like, what we were talking about, the other one was different. It was 2 weeks to kind of clear it through the administration before we went to the complete opt-out, then another 2 weeks to let parents do it. So for the non-PPRA stuff, that's why you have some flexibility. If you wanted to do it on each survey, which doesn't seem like it's administratively feasible at all, you could say you got 24 hours. There's no statutory requirement one way or the other. This way, you're at least kind of blanketing it and saying, we're gonna deal with this at the beginning of the year. And actually, when you said it, Aaron, it's just like the pictures, right? You always have the parent who says, I don't want my kid any pictures, and then they're all upset when the yearbook comes out. Why is it like, oh, because you checked the box. You know what I mean? We can't be going around and in order to try and administer this accurately, we need sort of a blanket prohibition or a blanket approval.
Beginning of the year, you're in or out.
Yeah.
Would not go throughout the year with every single
Yeah.
survey that may be.
Doesn't work.
And
Well,
parents
and
just
we-
need to understand that.
And we do that currently, right? We do that, so we do that currently now. So there are families who indicate that they're opted out of. The question I would have is that, because I know surveys are sometimes given out just for just pure logistical purposes. Like, it could be a survey to find out about, senior graduation information, for example, you know what I mean? Just to know,
Yeah.
things like that. Would that be included?
That's a
Mhm.
non-PPRA.
It's not something
Yeah,
like-
non-PPRA survey. The
No, that's
survey,
a form.
do we wanna have chocolate milk in the cafeteria?
No,
I
like,
mean,
do you need a cap? Yes, no,
Yeah,
is a
exactly.
form. That's not a survey.
Oh, no, that's not a survey.
That's
Okay,
like
all
a
right, I'm just
form.
making,
Yeah.
That's for
I want-
information
Yeah.
ordering.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
like that's a form in my mind, that's not a survey.
Okay.
I know
I'm
that
not-
I know that they could be,
Surveys, anytime
A
you're,
survey could be
you're
a form,
asking
yeah.
someone's opinion,
Got it,
right? You're-
okay.
You're getting people's opinion.
we might wanna include that, like actual language, like they're asking.
So I feel like we need a definition for what a survey is.
I thought
So-
somebody put one in.
I'm on Miriam, but it's not particularly helpful. I mean, basically, to query someone or something in order to collect data for the analysis of some aspect of a group or area.
Well, that would exclude a form.
Mhm.
I mean, I'll copy this, Jen, and send it to
Can
you.
you drop it in, or
Yep.
yeah?
Oh, can I
You can just drop
it
it in on the back.
I can try.
Okay, it's like, to Ken's point, gathering feedback, to understand experiences, opinions, and needs to guide decisions and improvements. I like mine
Okay.
better, Angie, I'm dropping mine.
You wanna drop yours, feel free.
Yeah, we can do both, and then Jen can figure it out.
Okay. So, did we touch on all the questions that we had from last time? Are we comfortable moving it along with the changes that we discussed?
I'm sorry, forgive me, so what was the decision on, senior project surveys?
They would fall under the non-PPRA surveys.
They would, how would that affect the students when they're trying to complete their senior project?
So they're just getting permission from the teacher.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
They're getting permission from the teacher, but if one of their classmates' parents says
Say
that they're not allowed to
no
take
survey,
surveys,
then they
that
can't,
student
then they
can't take
can't.
that survey.
And and it's totally legal for the teacher to tell the student doing the senior project,
Well,
to
I mean,
not
typically,
send this.
no, so what happens is in that case, the student sends it out,
Mhm.
right? And so it's really on that student. I mean, hopefully the parents or guardians are talking to their children saying, I don't want you completing any surveys.
Okay.
Because when that gets
It
sent
doesn't.
out,
It doesn't automatically filter?
like through our email system.
No, that's
no.
why,
No,
They
no.
send them via email?
The students will, either they fill it out in class, or they might send an email to others to
They
complete
do
the
like a
survey.
Google form.
Share the form with them,
Yeah.
or send the link out.
Mhm.
Wait, I'm confused. So
the
the
only way-
checkbox in Aspen saying this child cannot take surveys,
Yeah.
how does that function?
When you go into your process at Aspen, you have your students, on the top, when you put up your student, there's an icon on the top that says that student can't complete the survey.
Okay.
But it doesn't, there's no, but students still, students are students. If I'm a student and I'm doing my democracy project and whatever, and I have a survey I'm sending out about school lunch, right? And I get permission to use it, I'm now gonna share that with other students to complete. Or I might have a poster with a QR code that I hang in the school, fill out, this, you know, saying, here's a survey that I'm completing for. They're pretty just, they're open, you know what I mean? They're, and so.
I get the QR code, but I guess my question was like, so if I'm a teacher and I'm going to send out a survey to my students, I'm individually keying in students' names and excluding the ones with the star?
Yeah. How else would you?
Or you'd have to,
do that?
you could filter it in Aspen by basically, if you sent it through Aspen, you would just filter on anybody who
Right,
has
you
this.
take those
That's
students.
where
Or not true, basically, you can
That's
send it
kind
that
of,
way.
I guess in my mind, I thought if you make a check mark in a system, the system should be excluding
So,
those that
well, yeah,
shouldn't
you
be
can, so
pending.
in Aspen, you can pull out all the students that are
Yeah.
not, that are allowed to complete surveys or not allowed to
Yes.
complete
But
surveys.
students can't do that.
But students can't do
So
that.
I understand students can't do that. So it's the students themselves who are actually sending.
Right.
And how do they, is there like an all students email address?
No.
So they're individually typing students' names in?
Well, actually, could they do by class? Can they send an email by class or no?
How do you,
Graduating class or
your
no?
daughter do it?
Most of the ones I've seen, they do just compile a big list of people
Mhm.
and they send a big,
Mm-hmm.
they just do like a mail merge or a CSV of some sort as a,
Okay.
to
Typically
list.
do like a BCC though, it's not like you can see everyone's email.
Right.
You know, we've gotten way better with them
Yeah.
over the years of proper etiquette for it,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
yeah, that's.
So I mean, there is a chance that with the student democracy surveys, that it does go out to someone that's not supposed to complete it.
Yeah.
Is that done at a particular time of year, in general, or no?
Twice a year.
Throughout
Well,
the year.
democracy is twice a year, yeah.
And then
Well, I was
you
just
got
thinking of some
senior
kind of proactive email, but if it's all over the place, that
No, I
doesn't
mean,
really help either.
it's the spring, it's in the spring and the fall.
So Andrew, if the
Yeah.
student is sending it
That's
and not
fine.
the district, is it a violation of district
I mean-
policy?
It's a great question, Jen.
Yeah,
Just send for the
maybe don't wanna
students-
answer it on camera, but no, I mean, I think my argument there would be that that's a student sending out a survey, that's not a district sending out
They're
a
using
survey.
our,
Student to
they're
student
using
through
our
their email.
platform
Well, they can use our platform, still not our survey. I'm doing what I can here.
I understand.
The survey is part of the
No,
school
and I don't wanna
project.
get too much in the weeds, but I do,
But if it's an instructional thing.
Could you
It
not
is
put,
instructional.
could you not put something about like staff? or
yeah, those
administration
technically
sending
fall
the
under
survey?
like
They
it's for
fall under
class.
And just call that out in the
tool.
code?
Yeah, kinda.
And so the students who've already opted out do have the option not to do it, or their parents, so it would,
Could we say something like the non-PPRA opt-out applies to, school
School
administrative
disseminated surveys.
rather not student surveys?
Yeah, again, to me, in that Aspen thing, some kind of a footnote, or not a footnote, something that just says, it is, students are encouraged, or students occasionally send out surveys on their own, various projects. If you don't want your child to respond to those either, you should be counseling your child accordingly. Because I haven't even thought of the QR code. How do you prevent that?
That's the thing, like, we can't,
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no way.
we can't stop,
Yep.
students, if they choose to do it on their own, they
Yeah.
do it on their own.
Right.
That's up to the parent guardians to tell their children, I don't want you completing surveys, and the child to, be
I do
respectful
think we
and
could add
follow
something to the policy though for, the teachers, when they're like putting some language in about, when you're approving surveys, like please keep confidentiality in mind, as well as like sensitive topics, right? Like to the PPRA, like that's something that a teacher could talk to a student about like how to ask a question or something like that, depending on like what the survey is on.
That's gonna exclude a good chunk of the democracy surveys.
No, I'm not saying you don't give it, I'm
Okay.
saying when you're approving it, like if it's a survey and the students are asking for other students' names on the survey, like guide them to not asking for names, cause that's a confidentiality issue, like that's where
Yeah.
like some sort of like something there maybe.
I hate to bring this up, but I just wonder where, the whole purpose is like student protection, right? And is there anywhere in here or in the process where we make sure that a teacher or a student or anybody who's sending one of these out actually has a way of making it anonymous, if that's the way that we think it is? For example, if you send it out on any kind of political thing or whatever, even if it's not the personal information of a student, if there's a way, even without their name in there, like a Google form or a Microsoft form, of seeing who submitted the answer and then using that information, that would be bad, and I just don't see that addressed.
So it looks
It's-
like, I'm just looking at some that were sent out this year, it looks like they're not including, there must be some guidelines from the teacher, because it doesn't look to me like they are including others' emails, and it looks like the surveys have, like, the question is, you don't have to choose to put your name in there. So it looks pretty anonymous as far as the students are concerned, so there must be some kind of teaching that's happening behind that.
I don't know. There's lots of ways to ask for it where even without them putting in their information, you can tell who did it based on, the data from whatever records it. I know it's a problem in Microsoft Forms for real, cause our command had a problem with the anonymous complaint box being not anonymous, cause it recorded the computer that it came from, which was
Oh, nothing's anonymous, this isn't anonymous.
correct, nothing is anonymous, but I just don't
You can
see
track-
that
you can track
addressed
that
in
down in
here,
a
is
second.
having someone with a well-intentioned or whatever, then we're not requiring any kind of, we're talking about sending it out and notice and things like that, but I don't see us addressing, like, how do you keep that data safe? Over. Like, what are they allowed to do with it? Can they keep it forever? Do they have to keep it on a system that's reasonably secure? Does it have to be password protected? Does it have to be, depending if it's PPRA, does it have to be encrypted? Like, I don't know.
Well, would a lot of that just follow under our WISP policy that we already have for information? I mean, all that, any data, pretty much you would have to, whatever platform they're gonna use has to be approved by the district, which has to follow certain data privacy guidelines anyway. That's why we don't use Microsoft Forms, FYI. But Google Forms, you do have opportunity to be anonymous when you submit.
So is there something that tells teachers they're not allowed to use, or specifies which ones are secure that they can use? I don't know. Like, I don't know enough about what surveys go. My kids are in elementary school, so this isn't happening in my world.
I mean,
I'm sorry I brought
typically
it up.
using Google
No, no,
Forms,
it's-
that's
it's
what we
not
have.
sorry.
So, that's typically what is going out, is a survey through Google Forms, because that's the educational suite that the students have access to.
So if the student has their settings set, like we were just talking about in the meeting, some of us show up in this folder as anonymous llama or whatever, but anybody who has their Google profile set up, like Mia, it has their picture and their name. So
So when you-
if students are told that it's a confidential and we're just asking your opinion, but it's not actually confidential on the back end, I just don't know how, it doesn't seem like we
So
address
Jen, make that note, right, about the, like, basically defining anonymous and confidential, I think would be like the way, and I think in the definition of confidential, you write nothing confidential. Like, although, and also put something about, like approved district platforms, like for disseminating surveys. I think you could work that language in, and then that way if somebody sends out a wackadoodle survey from like not Google Suites and like it was a really big problem, then at least we have something in writing that backs that request up. And then to the part about the teachers, I would add just something about like that teachers approve, you know, surveys, like educational surveys, but you know, that they, through the lens of confidentiality and sensitive topics. Right, like, and if you put those three things in, that'll hopefully address some of the things that we just talked about.
There is a section on data protection and integrity, number 3 at the bottom, that generally addresses it, but I don't think it goes into the specificity
Yeah.
needed to cover it. It does talk about conducting surveys anonymously and no attempt to be able to identify student survey participants, so it talks about it, but it doesn't provide the mechanism.
And I took that from a Minnesota statute, so, because I thought like it was important, but I don't think there's a Rhode Island statute that backs that up.
Whoever cited what they cited came close. It's about the best you're gonna
Okay.
do. Yep.
I'm having like IRB flashbacks, not a good one.
Yeah, but still looking at the
Yeah, I would just add that part about using district approved, like you could add that to that and it would be fine.
Okay.
Jen would like to move the survey along to the school committee, so we have two choices. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we should bring it back if people feel like we need to talk more about things. If people feel confident in what we talked about, we can move it forward and let the school committee muck around with it and maybe send it back or approve it. But if people wanna see, like we could also keep it for one more time and then,
Yeah, whatever people
Yeah,
are
whatever-
comfortable with.
whatever
I can
the
bring
committee
back
wants.
the draft, or we can move it forward based on what we talked about, it's whatever people are comfortable with.
What was the definitive definition of survey we came up with in this room?
Andrew, did you drop it in?
I dropped one in and
I did.
Andrew dropped one in. The one I dropped in
Oh,
is, it's on the right, it's under your comments.
Structured set of questions?
Yep, and then Andrew's is right below that. I mean, obviously we wouldn't write by a school district, but.
Oh, shit, I just clicked
Do
it,
you
it
have a
went
different
away.
one?
Hmm?
Do you have a different one?
No, I don't have a different one, those seem overly broad for the purpose of this policy as the definition, so I don't know. I don't have anything to add to the thing, I'm just,
What would you want it to be more specific about?
well, a structured set of questions to gather feedback includes, it just seems like that over-includes the things that we specifically said we don't wanna include.
I did like the bottom part, that's why I picked this one though, cause it says to gather feedback, but then I like that it said to either understand experiences, understand opinions, and needs, and guide decisions and improvements. Like I thought that part for why we survey, like made sense to my brain, because like that is what we often send them out, right? Like we want students' opinions on something, or we wanna know what they need to have a better experience here, or we wanna understand their experience more in a certain area, so that's where I felt like it was specific enough, but super open to tweaking it.
I don't know that I have the answer, those seem really broad to me, but, I mean, consensus is not required, I'm not trying to hold this up.
No, yeah, no.
So I feel like people might wanna see a draft again. I'll bring
I
it
would,
back.
I would, I would
Yep.
say see the draft. I
Yep.
think we've made progress today, but I still think there's a lot of things that we've talked about that I'd like to see how they show up in
Yep.
language a little bit.
Okay, so I will bring a draft back at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Okay.
Cool.
Erin, you wanna do appeals?
No. I do wanna do appeals. So if you go into your folders, there's a new document that is at the very bottom, it's red line, which is actually a lie, cause I took all the red lines out. Appeal process 3/2026. You should be able to see it. Let me know if you can't find it, and I'll be happy to share. So basically what I did is I went through all of our notes from our last conversation about appeals, but because there were so many and there was so much redlining from like the different iterations, my brain was exploding. And so that old version still exists. You can still see all of our comments, all of the previous red lines, but I just made a clean copy for the purposes of not overwhelming our brains. So what I can do is I'll walk us through it, not line by line, but I'll note anytime I made a change based on your all's recommendations. I also did a lot of research on other policies based on things that we were struggling with, and as we were doing that, I found a couple things that I thought we will add, so I'll note that as well. And then I would love people's thoughts or opinions. I was telling Jen, I felt like I got it closer, but like there are definitely some nuances in process that especially for the parents and teachers in the room, like it would be really helpful to have your all's feedback on like, would this make sense to you, as for lack of a better word, a civilian reading it and trying to think about how you would appeal something in the district. So basically, I don't believe we made a lot of changes to the philosophy, maybe just a couple quick tweaks based on what you all had said. I did add, based on one of your recommendations, an applicability section, and so I would take a look at that and see if that hit what you were all hoping for. I think someone had made the question about defining applicability. You're nodding. Did I get your comment right? Okay, great.
I love this.
I mean, one of my goals in life is to make you happy. So no, I'm not joking. Like I was like, I can do this. Like I'm gonna get her comments in. Then underneath it, we had that conversation about scope and about how there were some policies that had different processes. So we went through and we noted those. And then Jen, you just need to update that special ed one with that law.
Yeah, it's not one law, that's where.
No, and there's the state complaint process, that's why I just sent you that one link.
I don't know how to like.
Is there like a website we could direct people to?
Yeah, there's a RIDE website,
Okay.
I think that's probably, because you can file a state complaint, you can go through like their
Yeah, and it's, if you want a
resolution, their
mediation,
informal
or if you want
resolution, there's
this, it's-
mediation.
yeah.
You could just write something that says like, due to the IDEA Act, I think it's like that, like, you know, there's a specific process for this, and then just link to the state page.
Or even if you just put
something.
special ed complaints and put,
Yeah.
you know, here, this link gives the various options
Yep.
to
We hate putting
avenues
links
to
in,
pursue.
but-
Yep.
Like direct them to RIDE, basically, right?
Yeah, but Ryan's got a whole page on special ed
Yeah.
complaints and the state complaints and due process and mediation.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, so there's that part, so that kind of handles like the differential processes that might, some of the policies might point to. We had talked about some like transportation, but when we reviewed it, the transportation one pushes them back to here, so we didn't list that one, because if you were reading that policy, it would push you to this appeals process. So we tried to just only list the ones that had different appeal processes for certain reasons. Then going down, under policy statement on the next page, I did add some definitions. As I was defining them, it almost seemed silly, but then also it seemed good, so would like some people's thoughts on those definitions, and if they are helpful or not needed, or we need maybe other ones.
Could I just
Yeah.
throw out there, under the policy statement before the definitions, I raised this at the last meeting, I just think, you know, seeking resolutions to differences is incredibly broad.
Yep.
And I really think,
Yeah,
I mean,
Catherine wrote
I
that
can
down, too.
envision the school committee non-renews a non-tenured teacher, and a parent says, well, I really like that teacher, I wanna appeal that decision. We have a
Yeah.
difference of, I mean, I think at some point, we need to say that, you know, appeal
So it
things
says it
that-
up higher, maybe it's just not,
It just didn't appear.
wait. So up in the, cause I added Rob's comment about school committee policies. Like we said that this is, yeah, so this policy applies to certain concerns and appeals, related to school committee policies. Like it's only those.
But it should also
basically.
be with, and I don't, try not to get too legally, but filed by someone who has standing to raise the complaint, like, you know, in other
It
words.
did say that, as
You
well.
can complain about any decision the school committee
Right.
makes, but it may or may not be your place to
Yeah.
complain, I don't know how else to say
So,
that
under
appropriately.
the definition of individual, and again, I want feedback on this, like, if
Yep.
it's not hitting, we have to change it, and I do agree the word difference is, we should, Laura gave us a suggestion. So I had written under individual, parentheses, student, parent, or guardian, under definitions, Andrew, the person submitting the appeal on behalf of themselves or the student, like, maybe we could
Yeah, maybe
tweak
who
that.
has standing to,
And who has standing.
yeah,
Yeah.
even just that would help,
Yeah.
like,
Yep.
again, you hire a building principal, I don't like that principal, I
Yep.
wanna appeal. I mean,
But
you'll
that
get
doesn't
bogged down.
violate a policy, though.
Yeah, I have a staff hiring policy, don't you?
Yeah.
Believe me,
Yeah,
I can
but, no,
relate
that-
it to anything you
But
want.
that's fine, so they appeal it to them, so like you say, hey, I didn't like that principal, and I'm pointing to this policy, and then, like, the superintendent says, no, we did not violate that policy, and then it would come to the school committee, like, you
Want that to
could,
come to this? I mean, I don't
pol-
have
if it goes
any
to
other
do
school
with the policy,
committees
it
that
has
would
to.
get that involved.
Yeah.
I don't, and you can really, you think our meetings are lengthy now?
yeah, but isn't the whole point that any decision made that's connected to a school committee policy can be appealed?
That the person has
somebody who's
standing over
personally
it.
affected
Like, a
by
parent
it,
doesn't
yeah.
have any standing to determine who their child's teacher
Yeah.
or administrator is. School committee does, and the superintendent does.
Okay, so
That doesn't mean a
I'm
parent
not saying
does.
that we shouldn't add that, I think that adding that is fine, so we would redo it there, the person submitting.
Yeah, I think that would be
the
fine. Just,
proposals.
I just wanna make sure it encapsulates,
Yeah.
gives us some avenue to say, that's really not your call.
Yeah,
I like that. I did propose at the top a way to scope decisions. My idea was regarding the specific application of a school committee policy. Like not a general one, specific, like specific circumstance. And I wanted to
Where did
say
you put that?
articulable school committee, at the top.
yep. So the purpose of this policy, regarding specific application of a school committee policy. You want that before when the concern cannot be
Oh, I would just, instead of, appealing decisions when concerns can't be resolved, I would say appealing
yeah.
decisions, or even appealing final decisions regarding the specific application of a cited school, like you should be able to cite to a policy section, and you should be able to say
Right.
this specific application.
We'll come back to this. It's like writing the introduction before you see the body of the paper. No, because let's see if, I went through in the steps and tried to clarify some of that stuff, and so let's see if we can let's come back to the intro at the end. Yeah,
I had just a quick question on the wording for appeal, and it kind of
Yep.
played a role as it came into the informal resolution. So when I hear the word appeal, like I think moving up, like decision has been made, I'm appealing it, I'm going to the next level. But as it's written further down, I think in the informal resolution, it seems that if I am going back and forth with my son's teacher,
Yeah.
then I can have an appeal to that teacher, and I feel like that, like I'm having a hard time wrapping my brain around that. Like, is that a formal, like back and forth, and then the appeal
I
goes
honestly
to
think
the
that's a typo.
supervisor?
I think I
Okay.
typed it wrong. It probably should read, if a resolution does not seem possible, a written decision
Okay.
should be requested to the staff member to officially deny the requested resolution. So that was when you all were talking about, like, you're going back and forth, you're going back and forth, you're going back and forth, and you didn't wanna escalate it to the principal without having the teacher get to make an official decision. So I think honestly, that appeal
Okay.
word should be decision, but I'm open to anything people, if that
Mhm.
makes sense or doesn't make
No,
sense.
that-
But that was kind of the goal of trying to capture that piece.
Yeah, that helps. I was just rereading the definition for appeal, and then it said
Oh, no, that
reconsider a
makes literally no
decision.
sense.
Yeah,
Yep.
okay.
I was just in the word, I was too deep in the word appeal. So does that sentence make sense to folks? If a resolution does not seem possible, a written decision should be requested to the staff member to officially deny the requested resolution. Would that make sense for like, okay, so I'm gonna, does the parent appeal? Okay, we'll get to the steps in a sec. So what I did here is, so basically, we had talked about somewhere, and it might have been in the other meeting too, with DEI and discipline and the principals weighing in there, that like the goal at first would be informal resolution, that you would, if possible and if safe, you would talk to the person that you were having a difference with and see if it could get resolved at that level. And so that's where informal resolution is listed there, but is not listed as an appeal step, because you're appealing that decision. So like you're going back and forth with the teacher, you say, hey, like we don't think we're getting anywhere, can you please give me a final decision on this? The teacher says, I deny your request to do X, whatever. Then the appeal process starts, because now you're appealing that denial, in theory. Does that make sense? So that's why it's kind of separate. And then, and we don't know where this should land, but on the next part of the page, we did want to list the organizational structure somewhere. It might be make more sense as an appendix. So that, because we do reference people's supervisors and like who goes where.
Should that be a little more
Yeah.
general, only because if that changes, then we
Yeah.
have to go back and
Yeah,
change
not
the
like with
policy.
names, but more like building principals report to assistant
Right,
supervisor.
right, I would keep
Like-
it very
yeah, not
with
general
names,
versus.
I was just gonna
general.
link to your website, which I assume, it's not people, it's like the,
Mhm.
but follow Wyatt if you think there's a better way.
No, I
That's
think
what
it
hap-
makes sense, it's
yeah.
there, so people know, okay, so if I'm going from the teacher to the principal
Yeah.
to, then from the principal, it goes to an assistant principal. But if it's related to special education, it goes to the director of
Yeah.
student services,
Yeah.
but I just,
Yeah, that's where I got,
Yeah, I-
transportation got me like all circly, so that's where I thought directing, so keep that thought and then we'll circle back. So then, so somewhere referencing organizational structure maybe, just so folks would have a clue. So then I went into the appeals process that we had been working on, and the first level in the old one that we had worked on said principal, but then we had that conversation about, like, what if it's a transportation issue, like, what if it's, and that, so principal isn't always the answer, and so, we changed it to supervisor, but then I put in parentheses, skip this step if supervisor is superintendent, so like, because the next step is going to the superintendent, and so if the person that you got the denial from, like say, you got a denial from the athletic director, right? The athletic director reports to the superintendent, so there is no level 1 for you. You're going right to the superintendent because they're the supervisor. Does that make sense? No, you're all looking at me like, no, that does not make sense. Kind of makes sense? Better way to write it? Alright, keep marinating on that. So then it goes into like how you appeal it with the supervisor, and in some cases that will be the principal, in other cases it might not be, and then it worked in the pieces where you had talked about the 7 days of getting the response, and then if they didn't get it, it would be an automatic assumed denial, and if they would wish, they could go on to the next step for the appeal process. Level 2 then directs you to the superintendent's office, but I did write that one a little bit more generally, that it would have the designated administrator, because thinking of the same process of like supervisors, if you were appealing a decision from the transportation department, like Dr. Duva may assign the director of operations to be the person that looks into that process and make a recommendation to him. And so I didn't want it to just always be superintendent, if that makes sense. So I wanted feedback on if that made sense to folks. And then when you get into the appeal to the school committee, I tried to outline the process of what that appeal and hearing would involve, and so would like folks to like read that part to make sure that it made sense to you all, because I feel like that's an area that there's been no official process or transparency. Like we know what we do and we are very consistent with it, but like it's not written anywhere for folks, so I'll stop talking for a second.
The one thing that stood out,
Yeah.
just in the level 3, was the 4th bullet. I think we tried to capture it, but shall consider the matter at the next available regularly scheduled meeting. I might just put a caveat in there, dependent on timing and agenda and length of agenda, or just something, because if it's an emergency, and you guys are always good about trying to get something on, but if it's the thing where we've already got 3 presentations and maybe another hearing or something, if it's not a true emergency, you may want to say we're going to put it to the next meeting or something. I would just maintain a little bit of control over when you schedule that. Just put some kind of caveat would be my suggestion.
When possible.
Anything, Jen, that gives you the ability to say, hey, listen, this next agenda is really,
Yeah, we're so sorry,
full.
but
Yeah.
we have to
and-
approve the budget,
Yeah.
can we
Yeah,
do it at the next one?
Exactly. Yeah, budget's a great example.
Okay, so I'm gonna stop talking for a second, just to let folks read, particularly that level 3 one, if you all don't mind. Folks need a second, or are they
The
good
fifth
enough?
bullet, I think we just need to reword.
Great, let's see.
Do I'm doing the same.
Okay, so under level, appeal to school committee, the bullet that you have highlighted?
Nope,
Purple
one
one.
before it. It says during the hearing which will be held during a business or special meeting, often in executive sessions. I think we just need to, are we just looking to say that the hearing is held? Hearings will be held during a business or special meeting in executive session unless the individual requests it to be in an open meeting. Right, I think that's what we're trying to say there.
Yep. So, how do you want me to flip it? Is that the confusing part? Is it just the grammar, or is it the actual thing?
I think, well, we wanna take away during, I think we wanna say the hearing will be held.
Yeah.
So the hearing will be held during a business or special meeting, often in executive session, unless the individual requests it to be.
Should we just say the hearing will be held in executive session unless the individual requests it be held in open?
You can
We don't
simplify
even
it
need to
that
say
way. Take
business or
away-
special,
right.
yeah.
A question on the second bullet.
Mm-hmm.
Committee will determine whether the appeal falls within its authority.
Yeah, so that one
Bless you.
was in the old one. I didn't write that this weekend. That one was somewhere, and I was trying to think of an example of when people appeal stuff to us and it doesn't fall to the school committee's authority. One example would be the special education stuff, so like if someone came to us and said, I'd like to appeal this, I would say, no, off to right you go. You know, so I do think that that's where like there's that assessment of like, hey, does this fall under us, does this not? And then also to Andrew's point, like, does this person have, what was the fancy lawyer words used?
Standing. I mean,
Yeah,
is it
do they have
is it something
standing, do
that-
they
yeah.
not? So that might be another, like we might wanna add.
I like that because it gives, it kind of flags the situation. If the superintendent says to me, hey, someone's appealed this, or Erin says someone's appealed this, can we even hear this? We can have an analysis with the school committee, explain to them that, and then maybe they write back a nice letter that says, having reviewed this, we don't have jurisdiction over this, however, you can go to X.
No, that makes sense. The only thought I have is that I agree, and I agree with that. My thought though is like, is that just open to the committee's interpretation of what does fall under their authority?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the way that works in practice, quite honestly, is if someone appeals, if someone something happens with a principal or a teacher and they go right to RIDE, RIDE is very good about saying to that parent, let's say the
Like,
student's
no,
parent,
yeah.
have you done, have you followed this process? At least that would give the parent the opportunity to say, yeah, I appealed to the school committee told me they're not gonna hear it.
Got it.
At which case RIDE would say, okay, then we'll, you know what I mean, we'll hear it, presuming it's something that they'll hear. Because otherwise, they're just gonna kick it back to us. If the parent says, I asked the school committee, but nothing happened, then what's gonna happen is Dr. Duba's gonna get a call, or I'm gonna get a call that says, hey, what's going on with this? What do you know what I mean? So I think it's prophylactic to where they need to go and RIDE.
It actually was not in the original policy, but
What-
that doesn't mean that we can't have it in this one.
It may have been in the original
It
draft,
was
the
in the
draft that
draft,
they saw
yes,
last week,
yeah.
yeah, sorry, I knew I
No,
didn't
no,
type it
that's
this
it.
weekend,
I just wanna make
that's all I
sure
knew.
that
Do we wanna add
was-
something in there though, like, I mean, cause I'm thinking of it on that side, but I'm also thinking on the other side, like, if someone were to appeal straight to the school committee without first going through the process leading up to that.
Oh, okay,
You
so.
know?
So, yes and no, because of the part about, we had talked about how there were some situations where they would not feel comfortable or safe to go through this process, and they would skip, like,
And I think this covers both though, right? Because
Yeah.
if this is the school committee, and I hadn't thought of that, Rob, but the school committee could also say, hey, this is, we hear what you're complaining about, but we just found out that neither Rob nor Kenny have even had a chance to address this yet, so we're not gonna hear it at this point. Or conversely, it's a complaint against Rob or Kenny, so we're willing to skip that step and come right to the school committee. But I think that general language still gives the
Okay.
school committee the
Also,
ability to say.
I think if the appeal is against myself, right? It wouldn't go to me, that would go
Yeah,
to
go to the
straight to
supervisor,
school
go to the school
committee.
committee.
That would go to the school
Right.
committee, but if The appeal is about something that's happening at the building level.
Yeah, and it hadn't come to you
Or
yet.
district level that didn't, it shouldn't go to the school committee.
Well, but I think what I'm saying is that's.
It shouldn't, but my concern is that the language
Should
here.
go back to whoever it needs to go to
But I think that the language, the school committee will
That's-
determine if the appeal falls within its authority. What I'm saying is that they would say, no, it's not ready for us to hear yet.
Right, but what I'm also hearing is that if let's say I have a complaint, and something happens, and I wanna file a complaint about or appeal about it, if I'm saying I don't feel safe going to Dr. Duga for whatever reason, even if it wasn't a complaint against him, it could go straight to the school committee.
What could come
Right, so
straight
this
to
sentence that I wrote has nothing to do with that. Valid point, and we should circle back to that. This one was more about like, if they come to us with a special ed appeal, we would look at it and say, no, this is not us, you need to go here. So that's the authority piece that I was talking about. I wasn't
Okay.
talking about skipping steps or anything in that particular sentence. That was
We might
more
wanna
of,
clarify that though, because
But yes, you
that's how I
could,
interpret
according
it.
to this policy, yes.
See, I-
That's the intent of this
Yeah.
policy, would be that a person can enter it at any level.
Yeah.
So in the same
We can
manner
go back to
you
that
just
language though,
described,
but-
you would be able to.
Yeah.
We want that?
yes.
Yes.
Why would we want that?
Why would we want that?
Why would we want you, if you had an issue and you didn't feel safe going to the superintendent, to be able to come directly to us? Because where else would you go?
Yeah,
But
like,
what if you
what
haven't
if-
got, what if, so I'm a parent, right?
Yep.
So I'm a parent and I am unhappy with the, way a discipline was handled with my child in the classroom.
Yep.
Alright,
I'm
let's
gonna
circle.
I'm gonna skip
Well,
the,
Let's
no,
circle
'cause
back to the process
The
part.
appropriate next step for that instance would be the school committee saying, you're not at our level yet, you need to go back.
Right, but according to this, they don't have to say that.
Okay, let's go up to the top.
We don't have
Under-
to, no.
I'm in charge for this one policy only.
Okay.
Go back to process for a second, read this part at the top. The committee recognizes that due to the nature of certain situations, individuals may not feel safe or able to, and we can change that word if people don't like that word.
where are
Individ-
you?
I'm up at the
Process,
top,
process.
way up at the top, second page, process. And this was my attempt to, we're giving you the roadmap, but we also are acknowledging that there could be some exceptions to this roadmap. And so we can write it however we want, but this was my attempt. The committee recognizes that due to the nature of certain situations, individuals might not feel safe or able to pursue an informal resolution at the school level. In such cases, the district affirms that formal appeals may be submitted directly to the appropriate administrative level, and we could change it to make it a little more general, because this was very specific about this moment in time, to ensure that all the concerns can be addressed in a manner that prioritizes the safety, privacy, and well-being of those involved. So like, yes, would we like people to go through this process? 100%. But if they are not able to do an informal resolution, or if the challenge is with the principal, for example, like, that doesn't mean that they don't get to get it here because they don't get a no from the principal, if that makes sense. So we just need to work on language that makes sense for that, if we are in agreement that that is something that we believe in.
So
Does that make sense?
based on that appropriate administrative level, right? The levels.
This one's specifically talking about the informal resolution. So the informal resolution basically says, like, if you have an issue with concerning a staff member, like, the first attempt should, instead of going right to the superintendent or right to the school committee, the first attempt should be to try to resolve that with the person, right? Like, with the staff member, that situation is there. So this one is particularly saying, like, in reference to right to that next one, like, if you can't do that, we understand, and you can go to the next level, like, to try to get your situation resolved. We might need to say, like, I don't think I hit it perfect, which is
But
why.
is it also saying that it can go directly to the school committee?
That's how I'd read it, if I were a parent with a complaint and I got just to like, maybe like
Yeah.
a curriculum coordinator at the high school level, I go, oh great, I read this far down, I can stop now and I won't even read what's below it.
Yeah.
Like sort of the psychology of the order of what you're reading.
Because
So you might wanna move that statement lower down so that people see all the options they have. So instead of going to the principal, I'd go to the school committee. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like I'd skip
But this
reading,
says
you know.
appropriate administrative level.
Which,
It doesn't say the top of that.
I think a
Yeah, we can
parent would
change it.
ignore that. I mean,
Come.
as a parent, like, I
I think
jump
people
on
may
that.
look at it and just say level, I'm just gonna write to the
But
school
if
committee.
they went, so if that happened, right, they go to the school committee, right, and I get an email, I would say, okay, let's pull up this policy and I'm gonna walk you through the options and let me know you know, like, so that's where we would at least be able to point them back to the document. It's not that we would like, be like, okay, we'll have a hearing immediately,
Oh,
like,
no,
you know, like,
I totally think
Yeah.
you should keep that in there, I think you should put it lower down so
Yeah.
people aren't reading it first.
Yeah.
Because they're gonna stop, when they're reading, they're gonna read that under process and go, excellent, I can stop,
Yeah.
I can just stop and go straight to the top.
yeah.
Which
And
is
then-
sort of like how our psychology works if you're upset about something.
So you're saying process
Put
should
it
come after?
under.
Well, we would change
after-
the header, like, I'd
after
probably
level
change
four?
it.
Or call it something else, or put it lower down so
Yeah.
people are reading their, like, how they're supposed to do things.
Yeah.
And then that's like the worst case scenario if you're not comfortable.
So like at the end?
Yeah, at the
Oh, by
end.
the way, we recognize that.
Right,
Yes.
yeah.
Like the exception, it wouldn't be exception, but like something like that.
I think that's an exceptional, I think you're trying to like,
Yeah.
think of an exceptional circumstance, you know.
Yeah.
So informal resolution, appeal process, and then after appeal process, put it there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Alright, made that note, and then back to where we were before about the so if that is at the bottom, right, so you go in and you would be reading, you'd have the definitions, and you'd go to like the informal resolution piece where it says like, hey, try to resolve this at like the level of which you have the issue. If you request an official denial, you get that official denial, you can then go on to the next like supervisor, and then it would have them do that, and then they could appeal to the superintendent, and then they could appeal to the school committee. And then it would say, and then to RIDE, and then it would say, like, before the time sensitive concerns, we would put that language of, like, if following this, like, if you can't follow this process, like, you can, we will say it in a professional way, skip level basically, or something to.
Potentially skip a level, I think, I mean, I'm hearing both situations, and there may be an occasion where maybe it's not appropriate to come to the superintendent or assistant superintendent, but that said, I don't think you should just be able to say, well, I don't feel safe with them. I mean, you've gotta be able, there's still a process that needs to be followed, you don't feel safe, why?
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Duve is friends with Mr. Hennius, that's not gonna do it.
That's what I'm saying, because I think that this gives a very wide breadth, very carte blanche for someone to say, I'm just gonna skip to the end, and I'm just gonna have them hear it, cause I don't want anyone between them at that point and this point hearing this. I think it gives carte blanche for that, which I think, I understand the intention behind it, and I think the intention is valid, but I also think that we have to think that could really set it up for not the kind of resolution that might be.
So is it writing appropriate administrative level in a different way?
I think so, because appropriate administrative level kind of leaves it very open-ended, and the reality is that we have different roles, right? Kenny and I have roles at our level, the building people have roles at their level, the school committee has the role at its level, and again, every circumstance is gonna be unique,
Mm-hmm.
but I do think there has to be some language that kind of like gives us a little more of a tighter,
This is also just the part about where they submit their formal appeal. So they're going back and forth with the teacher teacher denies them, and then they look at this and they're like, oh, the next step's the principal. But like, I can't, whatever, for whatever, I can't go to the principal, right? So then they would go to the superintendent, and then like, the superintendent would like, it says like that they would interview people, ask for evidence, different things, so like I would assume, Ken, that you would like learn about that situation, and you would be able to talk to the principal, like, you know, like, it's just saying that like, there could be circumstances where they can't follow this exactly, so
yeah,
just
I'm
try to
sure
put
there
some
can
caveat
be,
into
there,
that, yeah.
100%.
It's not saying that like, when it gets to the next level, no information is gathered or
Yeah,
heard.
I think you just may have to, maybe limited circumstances
Yeah.
upon review, because and every situation is different. It could be something that doesn't appear, to be a problem on its face, then when you dig a little deeper, well, yeah, now this person really does have a legitimate reason, but the flip side is also
That's the
entirely
problem, is
possible.
because like, and again, we've talked about this, you often have to like, unfortunately think of the most potentially negative sort of situation, and that's kind of what we have to do, so like, I'm just imagining, somebody, maybe they know a school committee member, you know what I mean, like, maybe there's a way that they
I
could
think-
go straight to there.
I think that the flip side of that is a student not reporting something or a parent not reporting something because they can't have an informal conversation with the person that they, like, that's where
Yeah,
we're,
I think
I think that's what we're trying to.
I think the
I get
difference
it.
is that by skipping the levels, if someone has a problem at a building level and they're not going through these levels here and it goes directly to the school committee, that's a whole different flavor. Cause now that's going to 5 school committee members, they might be
It's
getting all
not
this.
saying that though.
Well, but when it says appropriate,
That's not the appropriate administrative level. If you
it
were,
isn't.
I think if you
Yeah.
move, I think if you
Yeah.
move it and just
Yeah.
tweak it, I
Next
think it's,
appropriate
yeah,
it's
yeah,
okay.
I know.
administrative level?
Huh?
Next
Maybe
appropriate
next
administrative
appropriate.
yeah, we could add next. What
Like,
do other
because
people
it-
think?
Because
about-
if, because that way too, if say they, okay, I went through at the building level, I went to the assistant superintendent, I gotta go to the superintendent, but you know what? I have a really bad relationship with the superintendent, or like, I just can't deal with the superintendent, I'm gonna go to the school committee. That's different, right? Than going straight from something that's a building level up to possibly school.
Yeah, but if there wasn't a good reason for that, we would determine that we did not have the authority in that situation and we'd go back to the superintendent. You know, like I don't think that caveat is to intentionally skip levels. I think it's for those very significant outliers of when it's either don't report or report. You know, so I think it's finding that balance between those, because like, just because it gets up to the school committee doesn't mean that they could determine this is not the appropriate level and send it to you. You know, depending on the situation and conferring with district attorneys and stuff. So I added under that limited circumstances, like something like that, to kind of say that this is an exception, like in rare circumstances kind of vibe. And then also perhaps tweaking to next administrative level instead of appropriate administrative level. What are y'all's thoughts?
One thing that I was thinking too is, I didn't see it in here and maybe I missed it, but if it does skip up, having some sort of language where if that's not the appropriate level, that there's some sort of mediation or something pulling back so that parents or individuals know that if you go immediately to the superintendent, it's a building issue, that the superintendent may push that back down, and that is a reasonable
Mhm.
expectation that, like, depending on what's going on, or having mediation if there's an issue with a principal or teacher or something, that there might be a mediation piece where it's getting addressed versus going all the way to the top and then there's no working
Or
between.
knowing too, like if you skip a level and you're going right to the superintendent, you know, I'm bringing it back down to that level, at least, you know, be part of the appeal process of me being involved, but I'm bringing it back down to that level to get those
And I did write a bullet
people
regarding
involved in
that.
investigating what happened.
Yep, so under the appeal of superintendent office, the second bullet did say, and we can tweak it if it didn't quite hit what you're hoping for, but the superintendent or designated administrator will review all documentation, may request additional information, or meet with the involved parties either individually or collectively. So that, when I was writing that, I was thinking of that situation where, like, that mediated conversation between the building principal and, or, you know, whatever it might be, like, I tried to put that specific line in to say, like, in that appeal, like, there will be some, perhaps additional information needed or additional conversations needed, so I tried to write that in.
Do you want to call out in here something to the effect of like, or at our level, like if you've leapfrogged,
Yeah, I made that note to, I don't know how to fix it in the second
You can put like
but I did-
absent just cause being, and I don't wanna, you know, absent good cause being shown, that, you know, it's possible that it'll be remanded to the earlier level. I mean, you don't wanna
Something
chill
like that.
people either.
Yeah, yeah.
I get it, but I think we can put some words in
to
there.
address the concerns, right, but to still allow for the ability for
Yep.
people to, because if I am a parent or a student and I have an issue with somebody at the building level, I'm not going to that building. And I would rather feel like I can come forward to whichever point on the chain that I feel comfortable, rather than not speak.
There's a difference too between submitting an appeal and having that appeal be heard by that level. So
Right.
anybody can submit an appeal to the
Yes.
school committee. That doesn't mean that we're gonna
That you-
hear it.
exactly,
Like,
yeah.
and that, the part that Rob was specifically referencing was about the submitting the appeal.
Right.
Not who's gonna
Hear it,
hear it.
right.
So I just made a note on the right about like absent of good cause, and then what you would mention about once it's heard, that it could, in theory, well, I'll write this better, but get pushed back down, absent of good cause, basically. So we can look through that a little bit. And then just some other things that I did add that were not in the old one are at the bottom. So I did put a section about time-sensitive concerns. So I thought it was important that this policy acknowledged that like there are cases where there are really time-sensitive concerns and that the district will try to help folks, like, you know, first day of school, prom, like there's all sorts of things like that, and so I tried to put that language in because that's our practice, but it's not policy, so I tried to acknowledge that in some way. I also, and Andrew, I'd like your opinion on this one, put in something about potential legal, like reporting, like if someone broke a law.
Nope, I saw that.
Like I thought that was important, like you should not be going through these levels if you think someone broke a law, like please call the police.
And not only that, yeah, I mean, we have an obligation on certain things
I
that
did
we
add
bring to, yeah,
something.
nope, I saw that, and I
Yeah.
think it's good.
I
Yeah.
added, I also added the retaliation section, we had talked about that, but I grabbed some language, from a couple different policies and wrote that. And then under the confidentiality and privacy piece, I tried to add some language there, about that we can't guarantee absolute confidentiality in all circumstances, because of like, if you appeal to Dr. Duba's not the only one in theory that might look at that appeal. Like, so I wanted to make sure people understood that. But then I also added in the part about mandatory reporting requirements under state law. Like, so if you report something and it falls into one of the mandatory things, like even though we respect confidentiality and privacy, like those things are not exact, like we would have to tell people. So I wanted to be transparent about those things. So those were the 3 sections that I had added that we had not talked about, but as I was digging around in other policies, I found. Other questions, thoughts, comments? Things I missed that like you were hoping I was gonna address? I tried to really go through all of the comments and try to find all the nuances.
I'm glad you did the definitions.
Yeah.
Are there other things that maybe we should define? I tried to pull a couple. I looked, like, anytime we had like done a parentheses, you know, like it originally said individual and then we were like putting parentheses, I like tried to pull those up, but I wonder if there's anything else people see.
Can I just ask a general question?
Yeah.
If a complaint, or if an appeal or complaint, process, like if it's an anonymous one, does that affect things at all?
What do you mean?
Like if it's made anonymously?
What we've done in the past is we've put some kind of a caveat that you need, that if someone's filing a complaint anonymously, they need to understand that could, depending on the nature of the complaint, you know,
Complaints aren't appeals.
Yeah, those are two different
inhibit or
things, yeah.
prohibit
Yeah.
thorough investigation and the processing of the appeal. I mean, there's only certain, you know, not always, sometimes it's anonymous and we're all aware of the situation, you can go right ahead and do that investigation. Other times, if you don't name the school, you don't name the date, you don't name the teacher, you don't name the other student, it literally becomes
Makes it sometimes
impossible
impossible to actually.
to do that, so I think,
Do we
where
need
where
to-
did we do that,
But
Jen?
that's in our,
Title
that's
nine?
in the bullying form.
Maybe that's
yeah.
where it is.
But a complaint is different than an appeal.
Yeah, I
right?
think
Yeah, you can
appeal-
submit the
Yeah.
complaint.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, that, so to your point of
But
questions,
an
I
appeal
feel like
can't-
an appeal.
can't be anonymous, because that person has to
Yeah.
come forward to.
Well, and if you
hearing.
look at that part about like the informal resolution, this is where like you're going back and forth, for example, with transportation, we'll just use that as an example. I don't like my bus stop, right? You're going back and forth, you're emailing with transportation, you want your bus stop moved, transportation's explaining to you why you can't move, whatever, right? Then you finally say, that's it, I appreciate all this conversation, but like, can you please just give me a final decision on whether or not you will move my bus stop? Transportation says, no, I will not move your bus stop, right? That starts the appeal process. So I feel like with this concept, like, it's not anonymous, like, these are very specific appeals for an individual,
Got it.
which could be a student, a
That's a
parent, or
good point, it would be
guardian.
hard to make it through this anonymously.
can't-
Almost
Yeah,
impossible,
now,
right?
can people complain about processes and policies anonymously? Yes, but that's not an appeal, that's just reporting, and those are different in my mind.
Yeah, I think you're
Okay.
right.
Do people feel same way, disagree?
No, I
agree.
agree on that.
So, does this make sense from like a parent perspective or like a teacher perspective? Like, so you've got an issue, bus stop, we can use the bus stop example because I think it's an easy one that could happen to lots of folks, right? So you try to resolve that, you're calling, you're going back and forth, finally you're like, that's it, I'm frustrated, I just need a final decision, move my bus stop or not, no, okay. So then in that case, where would you go next? Like, do you all know what would happen next based on what's written in here? Because if you don't, that means no one does.
So you go to the transportation supervisor, right? That's where it's gonna go. Transportation supervisor says, no, I can't move this bus stop. And the next step would go to
Superintendent.
actually, and then I would bring it back to the director of operations, because that's the direct supervisor. So she would look into it.
Oh, okay. So should we
But-
know about the director's operations then?
So that would
Yep,
be
so
part of
that's
the
where-
organization.
so look at this for a
Organizational
second.
part would come in.
This is where I was trying to explain it, but I don't know if it's quite hitting. So that's where I wrote while you all were reading, I wrote a sentence about organizational structure, right up on it, and I said, In order to determine the appropriate supervisor to appeal, you may reference the district's organizational chart. If it is still unclear, we recommend inquiring to the superintendent's office for clarification and guidance. Cause I was trying to think like, okay, if you can't figure it out, like you gotta be able to call someone, probably the right person would be that office, and they say, oh, it's the director of operations or whatever. I could put that underneath, like, I didn't know where exactly to put that, but, cause then the next thing says formal appeal to supervisor, so, you know, that would say, so you would look and say, oh, the buses go to this person, I need to appeal to the, or in that situation, the transportation person reports to director of ops.
And again,
Yeah.
depending on the timing of it, like for that example, if it came to me in timing, I'm not gonna quick say, oh, no, you gotta go to that. Like, I would, in collaboration, talk to the director of operations, the transportation supervisor, right, where are we, give an answer. If the answer's still no, then that goes to the school committee.
Yeah. Yes.
They could appeal it to the school committee after we give.
You could do it like that if you wanted to not follow what we wrote. That's why Andrew's laughing.
Oh, I'm just saying timing
Yes.
though, right?
Yeah.
But we also said that
Yeah.
if it's a timing issue,
Oh, 100%.
right? So
Yeah.
if someone went to
Yeah.
the transportation supervisor and said, you know, I want it moved, the answer is no,
I
and
mean,
they go to me, and I know,
yeah.
oh, well, this is really time sensitive, so I, you know, go back to the director of operations and transportation, what's going on, what are we doing? All right, let's give them an answer, and
Yeah, you're basically doing level 1 for them, which is fine. And so then it would go, so you go to the director, so transportation director says no, you go, or transportation supervisor says no, you look at the org chart, you're like, oh, it's the director of transportation, you would do this process with them, and then if that person still said no, then you would be able to email the superintendent. If he said no, then you would come to the school committee. Does that make sense for? It sounds cumbersome, but it's actually what happened. It's actually the process.
It makes sense. I think it just, once you have like that scaffolding of job titles attached to it somewhere, I think parents would more or less be able to tell you what they're gonna be able to do next.
And I don't wanna make it overcomplicated, but I was trying to think about like how it actually happens, right? Like, it doesn't just go from the supervisor of transportation to the superintendent. Like, there is a level in between that, or it doesn't go from, like I was thinking like, for like teaching and learning, like it ends up with you, not the superintendent. So I was trying to like make it so that it's more level than like specific
Yeah, I mean,
things.
it's cleaner if it's a teacher, right? Teacher, principal,
Yeah.
admin,
So-
but it isn't always a teacher,
So
right?
if it's a sports related thing,
Yeah.
so let's say it's on a team, so if I have an issue with a coach,
Mhm.
then the back and forth would be with me and the coach,
Mhm.
and then if it wasn't resolved, then it would go to the athletic director,
Mhm.
and then if it wasn't resolved there, then it would go to the superintendent,
Mhm.
and then if it wasn't resolved there, then
Mhm.
the school committee.
Mhm.
Yes.
depends on what area it's in and how many
Right.
supervisor directors there are in between
Right.
the original person and the superintendent.
I think inquiring at central administration, the superintendent's office for clarification means that somebody can filter that and direct them to the person who's able to help.
I think if, you know, if you put the organizational chart just with titles, they can see,
I can see
Yeah, I
Okay.
think that chart
oh
is
wait,
absolutely-
transportation, oh wait, okay, transportation supervisor reports to the director of operations reports to the superintendent,
Wait, hold on, let me put.
or it's instructional, it goes from teacher, principal, assistant superintendent.
There were so many caveats, like I was going through them, and like originally our last version said principal, and I was like, no, like this doesn't work, like I was coming up with all these exceptions, so that's when I like went back and looked at other policies to try to figure out how they made it more general, cause I didn't wanna have like one that said principal, and then one that said this, and then one that said that, you know, like it seemed too much, so I was trying to think of like what would cover the biggest umbrella of things, and this is where I landed. I just put in the link to the org chart just so folks could see it from a factual standpoint. Other things that maybe I missed in trying to capture? Laura, is there anything that you, even if you wanna go back and look at your old comments from, it's in that other version still?
I'm really just still, I love that we have an applicability section, but I don't think it narrows. I wanted to talk about when you already said you wanted to go past it, but
No, it's okay.
what this.
I just wanted people to see the whole thing before we got
Right,
stuck on the
to
top.
be considered under this policy, talk about it has to be in writing, like that's all the form of what you have to have, but what's the substance that you can we want it, not every concern, right, not every disagreement, we wanna make sure it's narrower than that. So how do we wanna make it narrower than that? Because like up here in purpose where it just says when concerns cannot be resolved at earlier levels, and then in applicability, it just says related to school committee policies, which to a couple people's points is everything could be related. How do we wanna scope it down?
Could be like clearly defined in a policy or clearly,
I mean, something like, or words to that effect, I would suggest, the specific application of a specific school committee policy. Something like that.
so this policy applies to concerns and appeals related to school committee policies that are submitted for formal review through the district's appeal process. To be considered under this policy, a written complaint or appeal must clearly indicate the intent to initiate a formal review process by referencing this policy or using language that demonstrates a request for formal administrative consideration. Matters not explicitly identified in formal appeal may be addressed through informal.
You're
Okay,
saying-
so what,
You're saying under purpose, we should say not just decisions, but decisions regarding the specific application of the policy when they can't be resolved.
Not just in purpose, I put in applicability and I would use the same words in purpose, applicability, and in a definition maybe of decision, because like right now, related to school committee policies, that could even mean I don't like this policy that you did, even if no one has, nothing has come of that policy, even if it hasn't been applied to your situation, I don't like this policy. Exactly, so we want a specific application, we need to have a thing that has occurred.
I'm like Googling standing, I'm trying to delegalize so someone can read it, I'm just not
Right.
doing so great right now.
what are you trying to civilian?
Like the standing issue, I think that the point is, it's gotta be something more than I just don't like it. It's gotta have a negative impact on you, your family, your student, and it's gonna be something that you have the right to challenge. Like, I keep going back to, I don't like my child's teacher. That may be, but you don't, unless that teacher did something demonstrably wrong, you can not like them all you want, you can love them, but you don't have the, it's a public school setting, you don't have the ability to dictate who teaches your child.
What's that phrase in that one thing, if you or anybody who is aggrieved by this decision can blah, 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 that's what we're going for here, right? Like if we've made a decision and you have been impacted by it, basically.
But not just
It's not just impacted, cause or it is in a legal sense, but there's a difference between what I'm trying to say legally impacted versus, well, yeah, I'm impacted because I don't like it.
Right.
That's something I tell my kid every day, things happen you don't like every day, buddy, move on.
It has to be ripe and non-moot, and you have to have.
Yeah, it's all the stuff I'm trying to avoid saying,
Yeah.
exactly right.
Alright, hold on.
You have to have an actual case in controversy.
Yeah, I'm looking at standing, I'm going through all of that right now.
And a civilian lawyer,
It's what I wanna say, but not how we
and
wanna
none of this
say
is
it.
legal. Yeah.
Give me
Yeah.
till tomorrow, I'll
Yeah.
try and cobble together like a sentence or two that captures it yet doesn't bore you to death.
Okay.
Alright, what about a formal request to review and reconsider a decision that has impacted a student, including the right to challenge that decision? No. Okay, Andrew will fix is what I will note on that one. In theory though, if it's family, something happens, and they say, I don't like my kid's teacher, I wanted to be on team D instead of team whatever, right? And then the principal says, nope, sorry, that's how it's done, your kid's on team D. And then they come up to the superintendent and Ken says, nope, like, nope, your kid's still on team D, they could appeal to us, and we'd say, nope, your kid's still on team D, and then if they wanted to, legally, they'd go to RIDE, and then RIDE could say, nope, you don't have any standing in requesting your kid's teacher, right? Like, in theory, whether we like it or not, they can appeal almost anything. We don't have to say yes to that appeal.
But you also don't have to hear it. I'm trying to, and I guess,
Yeah.
and I'm just trying to be fair to
Yeah.
the whole, like, I wanna try and be fair to everyone, I
Yeah.
understand complaints, and I am kinda like legalizing this, but there are some
No, I
things
mean, it is a legal
that
thing.
you just don't get, that you just don't, you know, unless the teacher hurt you, unless, whatever that is, but it's, I don't like, Mr. Henny is, join the club. See, you know, Mr. Henny, this is your teacher.
So is it direct harm?
How,
Are they
to
only
show
allowed
it.
to,
You know, Mr. Henny has pulled my son out into the hallway and screamed at him until he cried. Well, no, okay. Now we've got a situation we need to talk to Mr. Henny about. By the way, it still doesn't mean that Mr. Henny may not be your teacher, but we can address that. But I want to be cautious, and as Rob said, I always go to that's what I do, right, to the negative. I mean, you don't want to find yourself in a situation where, again, let's use the issue of a non-renewal, for budgetary reasons. Let's just say a teacher's being laid off for budgetary reasons, goes to the school committee, and I say, oh, you know what, my child was slated to have that teacher next year, I love that teacher, they're my next door neighbor, they taught my other child, I want to appeal that. To what end? You have no standing moot, you have no legal basis to do that.
say no legal basis.
It's better than I'm doing over here.
I'm asking Claude.
That's what I'm.
I'll take any and all suggestions, honestly, because I think we're all saying the same thing. I just want to try and make it so it doesn't chill people from thinking that they have no right to appeal, but it also makes it clear that you just can't appeal everything.
The other thing that I think is important to note is nothing that we have written in this policy is new. We are just writing it. Like this process, I'm not changing the process, I'm
Nope.
not, like this is not a new
The
thing.
language you have in there would be appealed.
What we have is our current
Yeah.
process, our current, and so it's just politicizing what we're, so I'm not what I'm trying to say is I'm not anticipating a flurry
An
of appeals
influx of
after this.
appeals,
I'm not, it's not trying to fix a problem, it's just trying to be transparent
hopefully it's an
about the
academic
process.
discussion we're having here, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
we are most certainly having some sort of discussion, academic might be a strong word. So I said, say no legal basis in layman's terms, and it said back, a formal way to ask someone to take another look at a decision that negatively affected you and to challenge whether it was fair or correct.
But it's got, you gotta have a legal base,
How do you say
Well,
legal basis?
no, it's
in-
not legal basis, might not even be the right term, it's justicable issue. I'm trying
Two
really to stay
minutes
away
left.
from,
Tried.
I will get it, I will get something tomorrow that we can all discuss.
Would it be as simple, maybe not this simple, but as including some language that says they have the ability to defer to the decision made at the lower level type of thing,
Who's that, what do you mean they?
So if a complaint comes in, or appeal comes in about a grade in a class, or like you're talking about if it starts at a lower level, right? It starts at the school level and goes to the superintendent level. Doesn't the superintendent on the appeal have the ability to say, review the information, just say, based on the information, I'm just gonna defer.
I think that's what Dr. Earl's saying, right? Is that you could ultimately go through the entire process, and even if the school committee heard it, they could say, well, thank you for coming, but we don't really have jurisdiction over that. We're gonna defer to the teacher who gave your child a C-.
And would that happen before, an official hearing has taken place?
I
or
don't see
could
how
that happen-
I'm trying to nip it in the bud
Yeah,
before
you're
it
trying
goes
to
through
keep
all
it
those.
from
Right.
Or at
coming
least just,
over.
so, you know what I mean, at
You
least
must
get a
have been
funnel.
directly affected by the decision must have direct impact on you.
We're getting closer.
You need to show that the decision affected you personally, the decision must have negatively impacted you in some way. To file an appeal, the decision must have directly affected you.
Yeah, I mean, the close, but
the best that the internet
that's,
can provide.
that's there, but again, I think you need just a
But-
little bit more, that it's gotta be something that you all have jurisdiction over and isn't just a.
I always go back to whether it was in violation of something, right? Isn't that kind of what we're getting at?
Yeah, well, I think we've said in violation of policy, and I mean, if that's where we wanna land, that's where we wanna land. We have a lot of policies in a good way, and I'm sure you can tie just about anything you want, even tangentially, to a policy.
Right, and we wanted to be a person who was impacted by that policy,
Yeah.
not, like you said, well, that's my next door neighbor,
Yeah.
and I think they're swell.
I mean, we've got a hiring
Yeah.
policy. Let's go back to my non-tenured teacher or any teacher who,
Yeah.
for budgetary reasons. I mean, what, you know, they may be the greatest teacher in the world that we've, but if that's what happens, that's what happens. And why would the school committee wanna hear that appeal when there's nothing that can be done about it?
Sure.
Well,
So
and you do have,
hypothetically, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was gonna say, you have other options, you can come to a citizen's comment, you can do all other things, we're just saying you can't avail yourself of this formal appeals process.
Exactly.
So what's the distinction of why you can't avail yourself, like what, in your minds, like, what's the differential?
Well, because, you know, let's say we've gone through the process and the school committee has voted, so let's use that, my example there. It's a budgetary reason, so it's not anything the teacher's done wrong. We've eliminated the position, whatever we've done, it's happened, it's done, the deadline is passed, we're moving on. A citizen can obviously come up when that decision's being made, even after that decision's made, and say, hey, you know, not for nothing, but this teacher was really good, it's a huge loss to the district, I can't believe you did that, it was very short-sighted, that's fine. But to have a hearing over that when there's absolutely no remedy that's available, really, or legal, I guess is my, and maybe I'm parsing straws, and to your point, hopefully it is academic, but I just get nervous
No, I agree
when
with
we
you.
have a incredibly broad something or other that's,
But you didn't answer my question. My question was, what is the differential, like between that situation?
they get to be heard, they don't get to have a hearing.
Yeah, but what's the differential? Like,
Right.
between heard and hearing, like, what's the tipping point for that? Is it direct impact, is it?
That's what I have to cobble
Yeah.
together. It's a
Alright,
bunch of things,
so-
actually. It's
yeah.
more than just direct impact, because I think that you can always argue, to some extent, I've been impacted, I'm annoyed by it, I've
Yeah,
been
like,
impacted.
I'm curious about whether, like, without this policy having been written yet, like, what would happen, like, right now, like currently?
I mean, there is one on the book right now.
I know you're really trying to avoid the word
Okay.
standing, but even from
But,
outside
like,
legal things, standing is a
wouldn't this
pretty
come up?
commonly
Yeah.
Well,
used
what
term.
we're talking about
Actually,
now,
I just
wouldn't this-
get nervous
Yeah,
that
it could
with
happen.
Like, this would be a
such a
disputed
broad
resolution,
net,
I would
it's
think,
not a great thing.
currently.
So
Okay,
I
so
wanna
Andrew's
be
gonna work on that.
cognizant of people's times, cause it's 7:02.
Oh, sorry.
This one's not going anywhere either. Chaz, I
It's so
appreciate you
close,
spending
though.
2 hours with us and we didn't talk about any of your
Chaz
policies.
is
I just really enjoyed being here.
There'll be a
Laura,
quiz
I
on standing
put-
tomorrow, Chaz.
Laura, I put in this, you said you wanted a definition of decision, but you have to write it.
Okay.
Like, I put a spaceholder for it, but like,
Well, no, we're talking about it, I don't mean a definition of what decision is, I mean what decisions we will be.
oh, I see what you're saying.
I will, what I will do is
You're
I'll
deleting
come up
that.
with something and I'll figure out how to circulate it to everybody, and no, you know, pride in authorship here, if anyone thinks it doesn't make it, we should do it collaboratively.
Okay, and our next meeting is April 13th, because we had it a little early this month because April vacation is the next week. And April, May, and then June is our last meeting, so no pressure for anybody, but we have a bunch of policies that we need to get wrapped up before school gets out for the year. Especially, we need some of them to be in place before the school year starts, so, no pressure, but a lot of pressure. So, I'm gonna make a motion to adjourn. Can I get a second? Second. Awesome. All in favor? You got it, Jess? Thanks.